yourself, Linda, and the work you're doing, and what's exciting you about the upcoming elections.
I want to say good afternoon. Happy Sunday. I want to tell the world, I want to tell God, thank you for putting me on the wake up list this morning. Thank you for putting my family on the wake up list. And thank you for putting everybody on this panel on the wake up list. So I have to give them all the glory. But my name is Linda Joseph. I hail from the great state of Florida. If you ever want to know what a product of Little Haiti look like, I embody Little Haiti. I am from Little Haiti. I was born in Little Haiti. I was there when they changed the name from Lemon City to Little Haiti. So I am a straight product of Little Haiti. Um, what am I doing and what I'm excited about? I work and I'm also I work for labor. I'm a labor organizer. Organizing is my life. I'm a labor organizer also. One of the things I am just super excited about is in this November, we're gonna take our future back from our of making sure that people can earn a living on Amendment 2. I'm going to go into it, how Amendment 2 works, how it came on the ballot, and then how to tell you that we are truly a progressive state, but we don't have progressive politicians that reflect our values. So I'll tell you how we had to change the Constitution of the state of Florida so people can earn a living. So that's what I'm excited about. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Linda, and to David again. You're not a guest. Excited to have you back. Um, Please present yourself. Tell us what you are working on. What is exciting you about the upcoming election. You're not a guest. Excited to
Certainly.
have you back.
So my name is Dave Metellus.
Please
I
present
serve as the
yourself. Tell
president
us
of
what
Calvin
you
Park
are
Strategies.
working
That's
on.
a
What is
political
exciting you
consulting
about the
firm of my
upcoming
own
election.
starting. The things that I'm working on right now, I am from South Florida, South Florida born and bred. I am right now working on the general election campaign of Chevron Jones. We were lucky to get through the primary with his campaign, and we have a general election. I also serve as the data director for the March On PAC, which is a subsidiary, national data director of March On PAC, which is a subsidiary of the Women's March. And I also serve as data coordinator for Color of Change as well. And so the work that I'm doing right now is really around making sure that the progressive movement has the best data possible, that we're working with the best tools, and we're communicating to the right voters. And those voters specifically are voters of color, from minority communities and different communities that are traditionally underserved by the Democratic Party and others from the progressive movement. And so I'm happy to be part of this conversation and to be part of what's going on today with Avance Ensemble. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Sandra, for the invitation. And others from the progressive movement. And so I'm
Thank
happy
you
to be
so
part of this
much. And for
conversation and to be
sure,
part of
my partner
what's going
in
on
Good
today with
Trouble,
Avance Ensemble. Thank you,
Nancy
Nancy, and thank you,
Mateer,
Sandra, for the
who's a
invitation.
board member who leads all of our political advocacy work for Avance Ensemble. She's a board member. She's also a candidate in Coral Springs. So check her out, C3. Her election is coming up as well. I always want to shout you out and give you space to make sure that you are giving yourself all the cheering and all the accolades that you deserve. Her election is coming up as well. So we're gonna get into it. Nancy, do you want to add anything? Go
No,
ahead,
you
introduce
covered
yourself,
it.
boo.
Yes, thank you so much. I do serve on the board of Avancance, and I am a candidate for Coral Springs, as well as I serve on many other organizations in South Florida. Roots List, we help promote and support pro-choice women into elected office. I also sit on the Broward County Status of Women Advisory Board. Again, we care about what's going on with women and girls here in Broward County. And also, lastly, want to say that I'm a community advocate. I eat, breathe, and sleep everything environmental science or climate change, and really want to push our communities forward in a just way. So I'm so happy that you all are here this evening and can't wait to unwind and really talk about the primary election and what's at stake in November 3rd. So I'm so happy that you
Right.
all
So
are
funny
here this
enough,
evening and can't
Nancy
wait
went there.
to
It's actually
unwind
way
and
before
really
November
talk
3rd
about the
because in a
primary
few
election
weeks,
and what's at stake in
um,
November on
ballots are
November
coming
3rd.
out,
So
right?
I'm so
And so
happy that
people will start to receive ballots. But before we go there, actually, let's backtrack. We had a lot happen in during the Florida primary elections. So I want to turn to David to talk about, why don't you lead, David, with some of these successes, some of the things that we learned. What do you feel about the turnout? Just really, let's share our thoughts about what we saw. I'm going to go to David, then I'm going to come to you, Jelani, because I know you were working and volunteering at some of the polls. So let's go with you, David, and we'll come to you.
Look, this cycle was different. It was historic because specifically because of COVID. We had a precipitous drop in the amount of people who were voting in person. But what we saw is a culture shift in Florida, specifically in South Florida, where most people went to vote by mail, where we see close to 58% of the overall electorate ended up voting by mail. And so what we saw specifically in the primaries, we made sure that we were speaking to people who were going to be voting by mail, because we knew because of COVID, people would be less likely to vote in person. And we know the electorate is generally skews older, and that is the electorate that is the population that is most vulnerable to COVID-19. So I think what we saw is that people still wanted to hear from campaigns, but they wanted to make sure that those campaigns, they didn't just want to hear about from those campaigns about why. Folks were voting for candidates that they saw were stepping up during the time of COVID, and that was the crux of the campaign that we ran during Chevron's race. We made sure that we centered him as a leader in the community who was giving back and not just taking from the community, and that was successful. I think it bore out when we won 110 out of 120 districts. We think that is the way that you communicate to people. You show them how are you going to be showing up for them, and then they'll show up for you.
Thank you so much for that, David. For Broward County, there were historical wins. We had there was a tight sheriff race. We know that there was also a tight state attorney race. So there was a lot that was happening in Broward. All of a sudden in Broward, you have, in terms of criminal justice, you have like mainly Black men who are really leading those agencies, from sheriff, state attorney, public defender's office as well. Jelani, how did you think we did? What are you thinking about what happened in Broward this election season in terms of primary elections?
Mm-hmm. So I'll start first with, I was a poll worker, so I'll start with that to make a plug for that for November for people, and then I'll talk more about my general thoughts. So I was really excited when I signed up, and then as it got closer, I was getting nervous because it's an all-day shift. You know, if you're a poll worker, you know, you think polls are open 7 to 7, but we had to get there at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, make sure everything was set up. And for the location where I was at, I was the assistant clerk. So I had to be there until the scanning machines were collected. And so I was there from 5:30 a.m. till about 9:20 p.m. On election day. So it was rough, but I am glad that I did it because historically, a lot of people who do volunteer at the polls are elderly people. A lot of them are staying at home. So we do need younger people to volunteer if they can participate. For me, it was a great experience because a lot of it is education. There were a lot of people who came to the polls on election day to their precinct with their vote by mail ballot. I was grateful that I could explain to them, you know, what to do for November. They had to either vote in person or take the ballot to the SOE's main office. There were a number of people there who didn't bring their vote by mail ballot. And I was glad to be in a position as well where if someone else was there would have said, oh, you can't vote, we need the ballot. That's not true. They can still vote on site even if they didn't bring the ballot with them. You know, if someone has an expired license, they can still vote as long as they have another form of identification. So that's what I think the if you're armed with information and you're being asked questions, you're in a position where you're not unnecessarily turning people away from voting and being a part of that. So big plug for working on the polls if you can. In terms of my thoughts of the election, because I was working that day, I really wasn't following a lot of it till I got home, but definitely historic to see how our main constitutional officers were going into the fall with a slate of historic candidates. You think of the sheriff, you think about public defender, you think about um, state's attorney. We also now have, Brenda Foreman was automatically elected. She doesn't have any Republican opposition. But if you think about the 6 main constitutional officers in the county, 5 of them are going to be African American. That's amazing and something that we can show people, especially people who are saying, well, what's the purpose of voting, especially if they're a lower income area or a predominantly Black neighborhood. We're all Black here and we may hear that as well. Well, I don't see the purpose of voting. It's the same old year after year. This cycle showed the power of Black voters and what we can accomplish if we all vote and encourage our friends and family to vote. And so, one, very proud of that. I'm a big proponent of increasing the number of Black judges we have in the county. And so we have a number of candidates who either were elected on the primary night or are going for runoff. We've got to make sure that we are tackling all aspects of the judicial system, the justice system, not just from who we're electing, but also who is running the sheriff's office, who are the judges, who are the lawyers and attorneys, public defenders. So very grateful for that and what that means for Broward. I saw there was a question about how does one become a poll worker. So to become a poll worker, you can sign up on the Broward Supervisor of Elections office. That's browardse.org. Towards the top, there are yellow tiles, and one of them will say become a poll worker. And that's how you can sign up for that. Thank you, David, for that. And so in order to be a poll worker, you just have to go through a 4-hour training course where you get information, you practice working with the machines. And then again, on election day, you're there 5:30 and you're leaving after 7 when the last voter is gone. But again, it was a great experience and looking forward to continuing this discussion tonight.
Thank you, Jelani. So much knowledge dropped. We need poll workers. We need poll workers who speak different languages. We need poll workers who are going to help people understand what's going on and give them the information so that their vote is counted because they already made it to the precinct, right? And so we know that voter suppression is real. We know there are a lot of misinformation out there. And so this is why we're doing this, to make sure that folks have all the information that they need in order to make the most educated decision at the precinct and when you're completing your ballot. Let's turn to Katya and Linda. What happened in Miami? I mean, there were some definite wins, but I know in terms of Black judges, there was some opportunities to get some gains there that were not necessarily we didn't get there. Just to be frank. Also, state attorney. What are you all thinking in terms of what are you all hearing in terms of Miami-Dade County and people of color? I'm going to start with you, Katya. Keep it real. Bring us home.
First and foremost, I want to start off by David is very humble. I want to start off by saying David did a fantastic job in running one of the hardest primary Senate races in the state of Florida, and he brought it home from day one. He was on board. I'd be remiss if I didn't say chapeau bas, David, good job. I'm super excited about the trajectory of seeing a young Black man specifically a Caribbean Haitian in this field. And I hope that when others see you, that we can recruit more into the circle of this type of work. I'm extremely proud of you and good job. I know you're far too humble to say these things for yourself, but I got you. Secondly, I want to say that given what people expected because of COVID and the global pandemic, I think that as a community, we did very well. I think that we showed up. I think that we voted. I think that there are some really hard races. There were folks, especially in the Miami-Dade County race, Miami-Dade County mayor's race. There were people that came out on top that a lot of folks did not think that they would. And I think it's going to be an exciting mayor's race. There was an opportunity to have a very progressive state attorney, and unfortunately that did not happen. But that also gives the opportunity. I think sometimes when progressives don't win races, I don't take it as a complete loss, because it shows that there is a need and there's a constituency base that is requiring and asking for something else. So every loss isn't a loss, right? Folks made their voices heard, and I hope to see a shift in direction on the way that things go for this community, specifically out of that office. The other thing that I'd like to, we had a number of county commission races with a plethora of Caribbean representation, and down south in Marlon Hill that was running against Keone, didn't quite make it, but again, did a great showing. Keone is a phenomenal legislature, and Marlon Hill is a phenomenal attorney and community advocate. That was a tough one for everyone involved, but I think that the more we show up, the more that we as a community put ourselves in position to be elected, it strengthens the collective. The more options we have as a Black community, the better, right? Like there should always be an option. It should never be a conversation where, and I've recently heard this, there should never be a conversation where people say one group doesn't have the right to have a candidacy in any race, right? Like that is the beauty of America. We have a district race here where we have a strong Haitian leader in Gypsy Metellus, who is running for county commission against Keon Hardiman, two very capable candidates. I'm excited to see how that goes. But again, I'm a strong proponent of our voices should be everywhere. And that is why there are elections, that everyone should be allowed to run, and may the best candidates win. I think that the future is bright for the African-American Black community and the Haitian community as a whole. We have the amazing Linda Joseph out of Miami Gardens, who made it into the runoff. So I'm super excited. She's a community leader. She's smart, she's bright. Again, having these voices, having folks in position to say and to bring in fresh voices, right? To bring in fresh ideas, so that regardless of who wins, the idea is out there, the energy is out there, and people have to pay attention. So those are the things that I'm particularly, like, people say I'm hype about, but we've shown that COVID-19 does not stop people from voting. That's also very exciting. Like David said, people still want to know who they're voting for. People still want to know how you're going to help us. And more than ever right now, having a say is important, right? Like they used to say vote or die, and people used to think that that was a joke. We now know that is not a joke. We are close to 200,000 people who are dead, and we know in this country that that is not a joke. So if you have not registered to vote, we're going to get there. But if you haven't registered to vote, I'm just encouraging everybody, go ahead and do that. If you cannot, if you have and you know that you do, we're pushing. It's 2020. Let's get 20 for 20. Get 20 people you know to vote. Like, listen, it is actually vote or die.
Thank you, Kassia. I love that you always go there. I'm going to come to you, Linda, in one second, because Kassia dropped some gems too. I think that often the rhetoric that Kassia is talking about, we forget that competition makes you great. It makes you better. It makes you sharp.
Absolutely.
Right? So no one gets to be like, this is mine. No, you got to work. Why? Because it makes you better when you know, when Burger King and McDonald's are competing, they making each other better. They changing fries, they changing meals. You come out with a chicken sandwich, I'm coming out. We're what they call sharpening iron, right? Making sure that we're doing the work to make sure that people stay solid. And so I think that's really important. And I also say that, let's not let folks divide and conquer us, right? I'm Black, you Black, we all want to make sure that there's opportunity for all of us to lead. And so those kinds of things, when it bubbles up, Nancy knows this about me, I get real irritated because I'm like, so many of us, let's be frank, for folks who are Haitian on this call, so many of us have always lived in districts where there's never been Haitian representatives, right? So when we do run, it can't be a problem because it's always been cool for us to be represented by our brothers and sisters. And so that support on the back end is also really important. I'm gonna come to you, Linda, because I know on the ballot, I'm not sure if you want to add any things in terms of primary elections, but there's an amendment on the ballot that I got wind of, and I'm like, so many people don't know about this amendment and the amendments that are on the ballots. So I would like for you to talk about that as well.
Thank you so much. And Katia, it's Linda Julian. I'm Linda Joseph. But Julian, listen, she got our support. I know we're Haitian, same name. No, it's all good. Listen. To be compared to her, that's nothing but an honor. But yeah, it's Linda Julian. And please vote for that.
I'm so sorry.
No. Listen, nothing to be sorry about. Listen, to be compared or even be mistaken to be her, I take that as a full compliment. Linda Julian is running. That is my sister. I support her. I love her energy. She can only bring good things to Miami Gardens. That being said, Amendment 2, ladies and gentlemen, Amendment 2. Listen, we really, like Kathy said, listen, it is vote or die. For years, our people been suffering. In the state of Florida, they say that you can live on $8.46. That's what the state of Florida say that you can live on. That's the minimum. They say we can pay you and you will live. I read an article in Time magazine. They said there is no place in the whole entire country that you can make minimum wage and live. You cannot even pay rent with that minimum wage. See, everything lies, right? People lie, people make promises. The one thing that don't lie is numbers. If you do the numbers, you know for certain there's nobody living who's making $8.46. You just can't. You will have 4 or 5 generations living in one house. You cannot. So what we did with the union and also with a great attorney out of Orlando, we got together and we pushed all the politicians aside and said, you know what, enough. We got progressive values. We know we pay people more money and that they deserve to be paid more money, especially in the Sunshine State, especially when we don't even have state taxes. So there's no excuses for not to pay people a living wage. So we jumped on the bandwagon of really getting on Amazon, just hammering them, just really embarrassing them, and really putting them out there. Do you know last year, Jeff Bezos announced that he's going to start paying $15 immediately, not in increments, not in thresh. That day, he picked the date, and there was a month later, everyone from that day forward went from making $8.46 in minimum wage, now make $15 an hour. So what that tells you, it could have always been done. They just never did it, and it was never pushed to do it. And thank God we have a union, and we have a labor union that pushed them, and they do it. So now, like I said, we push the politicians aside. We collect enough. We collected enough ballots. I mean, enough. Oh God, the word escaped me. Someone help me out.
Pledges, like signatures.
Yeah, but it was on a petition. Thank you. We collect enough petition so we can put on this November that Amendment 2. Let me tell you about Amendment 2. I'm not jumping up in joy for Amendment 2 because I think we could be much more progressive. I think we could pay people much more, but this is at least a beginning, right? Because we have to do something. The way we're living is just not comparable, especially for hardworking people. So Amendment 2 tells you in 2010, you will make $10. Everyone will start in the state of Florida, everyone, down to fast food, down to the T-mummies, the ones who work in the hotel industry, service industry, everybody will be at $10 an hour, okay? And every year after that, you have $1 raise. Even if the boss want to give you a raise, he don't want to give you a raise, the state of Florida, if we vote this in, they have to give you $1 raise. So at 2026, you'll be at $15, which a couple of years ago, people were laughing, saying, no, I want to pay you $15 an hour. And now we're seeing it become reality. And if you want to really look at it, $15 is $30,000 a year. Do you know that people was not making at least $30,000 a year? That is, I think that is almost criminal. And we are in the state of Florida. 58% of the people live under the poverty line in the state of Florida. So this is one of the things in Amendment 2 that we're really promoting, that really pushing for people to really go out and vote for this. And secondly, let me tell you, the competition, the opposition is fearful. They will spend millions of dollars just to defeat this amendment instead of paying the people the money. They will pay lawyers and advertisers just to beat back this amendment. So Amendment 2, we need you. The state needs you. And we used to call these people essential workers. Let's start treating them like essential workers. If anyone have any question about Amendment 2, please call me. I will come. I will talk about. I'll tell you what. I will bring you people. One of our members said to me, Linda, $15 is not going to change my life. $15 is going to save my life. Our people are dying out here, and they're working 2-3 jobs. I have one of my members who used the creamer in a McDonald's coffee to give her baby milk. That should not be in this country, and she works. So this November 2nd, we really need to come out for Amendment 2 in big drove numbers. I gotta plug my computer. I'll be right back.
Thank you so much for that, Linda. I think it's really around the sensibility of being sensitized to what we know our communities are experiencing. And when you think about $30,000, that's broke in the state of Florida, right? You can't rent, you can't buy a home, you can't save. And so that is really important for folks to know that in November on this election, the ballots that are coming to you, there will be amendments. One of the amendments, Amendment 2, is around increasing the minimum wage in the state of Florida. Listen, don't complain about minimum wage if y'all don't vote, because here's our opportunity to get it done, right? And so we want to make sure that you all know, you've heard it from us. If you have questions, you can contact Linda to make sure that, we're all clear. And Nancy, flag us if there are any other questions that are coming up. I want to go to.
This is the one thing I want to say. There is a reason why you guys do not know about Amendment 2. It's not by accident. It is just another way to suppress the votes. You understand? So that's another avenue. So tell a friend, tell everyone. This amendment, finally, this is probably the only opportunity we might get to raise minimum wage in the state of Florida. The House has passed the bill for $15, the same bill for the federal minimum wage. It died in the Senate. So if we here in Florida, we want to show our progressive values, we need to vote for Amendment 2. Thank you.
Thank you. So and I know Sandra. You're welcome. And I know Cassia wanted to come in on Amendment 3. That's making its rounds as well.
Oh yeah. It's important to make note. I think that sometimes people don't understand why some people know about certain amendments and certain people don't, right? Amendment 2, and I'll get to Amendment 3, but what Linda said is extremely important. Amendment 2 is powered by the working class and the people who need it. And they don't have money to put together a campaign where they're on TV, where they're advocating, where they're doing those things. I want to say that it's upon us, if we want to spread that message, to do that on, each one teach one. Again, 20 for 20, get 20 people involved, let them know what the amendments are. Another very dangerous amendment that no one is talking about is Amendment 3. Amendment 3 is an amendment that is sponsored by a billionaire healthcare executive out of South Florida who worked for Rick Scott, and he would like to see what Amendment 3 would do is open primaries, meaning everyone would be able to vote in a primary. And on its face, that sounds great, right? But you also got to think about a billionaire who supported Rick Scott would be, you always question motives. This amendment would change the way that we do elections in Florida for statewide elections, meaning once you have a primary, the primaries will be open, and the top two candidates are the top two candidates that go to the general election. And if this amendment had passed and we were talking about 2016, Andrew Gillum would not have been one of the two choices. The two choices we would have had were Putnam and DeSantis. It's not, oh, if I'm an independent and I want to vote, I should be able to vote. That's not really what it is. We can at some point make that reality where you can vote in primaries, but having an open primary where the top two are the ones that we're stuck with at the end is something designed to make sure that the legislature starts to change, because these are for legislative races, for cabinet races, and for governor's races, nothing else. So this is very targeted towards making sure that that legislature stays Republican, making sure that that legislature looks a particular way. If you were someone who would like to keep it as fair and equitable as possible, then the recommendation would be to look at Amendment 3 and not say, oh my God, yes, I'm gonna vote for this because X, Y, or Z. I just would like people to be educated on what a yes vote is and what a no vote is. Because a no vote is not, we don't want this. We don't want something where you're going to silence the options that people have come general elections. Again, the strongest point I'd like to make is that this is something that, had it been in 2016, your top two candidates would have been two Republicans in your general election. This doesn't do what people think it does. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, this is also an amendment that you're just not going to hear a lot about, because it's backed by a billionaire Republican and it's backed by a billionaire who has a particular agenda, right? Our job is never to tell you who to vote for, but our job is to tell you what each vote actually means. What does it mean in real life? What are the consequences of that? So understanding that a no vote for Amendment 3 basically means that, you know, you want to continue the fairness of it. You do not want one party to have more say-so in our statewide and our legislative process as possible.
So I think, to Kasia's point, for Amendment 3, when folks on its face, people think that this would allow for independents to vote in our closed primaries. And that's actually what it's not. What it's doing is that the top two, the folks who get the most votes, whether or not they're in the same parties, those will be the ones that's on the ballot. So in the case in 2018, the top two people who got the most votes were two folks in the Republican Party. We wouldn't have had a Democratic candidate to choose from, correct?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So what we're saying is, don't fall for the okie doke, right?
Even just in the name, I'm telling you, they're so crafty and they're so conniving that they'll call it all vote counts. You know, they pick tricky names, and what it is a complete opposite. Is that they wanted to suppress our vote and our voices, because our state is so gerrymandering. So that's why they could take advantage of it. So no, I mean, so yeah, really look at the fine print and watch who's the one who's putting out there. They're not for the people. If anything, it's regressing for the people.
It's a shift. It's a group of people who are looking at the demographic shift of a state. Saying, how can we manipulate this so that we can retain power? And when you understand people who are doing it, understand why they're doing it, then you can't be duped.
Exactly.
So in educating in these conversations, I love that Avanciansum is doing, constantly getting the word out, allowing people to understand what they are voting on. I'm of the belief, Sanctuary, and you know that, Nancy, even David, vote for whomever or whatever. But do not wake up November the 4th and say, oh, I didn't know that's what that did. What happened? Do you know, let's be educated. Let's educate one another. It's not sexy. You know, it's not the thing that everybody wants to talk about. It's not an entanglement. It's not WAP, you know, like it's not any of those things, and we know it. But at the end of the day, it is our life. You know, like this is how we live. These are the things that impact us, making sure that we have, and then this would drastically change almost overnight the number of representation we have in that legislature that looks like us.
Right.
And you got to understand, there's one party, when they see that it doesn't work to their advantage, they move the goalposts. Remember that. And you got to question when they do these big amendment, why they're doing it. And it's because exactly what Katia said. They see the demographics changing. They see it. Instead of appealing to us and said, listen, look at this party, look at this, they rather change it because they don't want to talk to us. They don't want to invite us to their cookout. So they rather change the dynamic of the game to keep us all out altogether. So we have to watch what we're doing and really be conscious about and watch what they're trying to do to us also, and silencing our voice.
So,
Jelani, I know. Go ahead, Jelani.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard to jump in. You all move so fast. I wanted to say this is a really great discussion because I think I'm an educated voter, and I didn't know that it was set up like a jungle primary because I'm all about more people voting. You know, let's get rid of the two-party system. Let's get more independents involved. And I just thought it was, you know, if it's a Democratic primary, Republicans can vote in it. If it's a Republican primary, Democrats can vote on it. I didn't know it was sort of set up for the top two, like in California, they have something like that where the top two person with the votes, they move on to November. That would definitely impact the voter dynamics here in Florida, where Black voters in certain areas make up a large chunk of primary electorate. And so if I am a super voter and very educated in a lot of these things and I didn't know this, I just can only imagine how many others didn't know it as well. And to follow up with that as well, you know, a few years ago, you know, like when we had Amendment 4, and also a few years ago, there was like a solar amendment that I'm sure Nancy knows more about than I did that was defeated. Amendment 4 was passed. I don't know if the pandemic and sort of how before, you know, we would be going to meetings and there were people there standing up talking about these issues. There are mailers going out, you know, on defeating certain amendments in 18 and 16. If it's possible, maybe that people don't know, like I knew about this Amendment 2 because that was really big the last 2 years with people signing the petition to get it on the ballot. But I don't know if because there hasn't been that much advertising going on, there's no public events where we can learn about this. If maybe that's really why we don't know a lot about these amendments, and I'm wondering if that's going to have an impact in November because you know, I'm now learning about this and it's September, and so I don't know if anyone that knows more about these amendments knows has any feedback for the ones that we think are going to help our people that we want to get passed, and the ones we don't want to get passed, if the lack of public engagement on it can ensure they're successful because of how they're worded sneakily on the ballots to confuse people. So I don't know if anyone has thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think from my understanding, and for sure everyone else chime in, my understanding is there's only a yes on number 2. I think it's a no-go for all the other ones. That's what we're hearing from our partners. That's what we're hearing from organizations that we trust, that yes on 2, no on all the rest. And I believe, Linda, help me out, and I'm sure David, anybody else, how many amendments? Is there about 9?
I think there's 6.
It's 6.
There's 6 of them.
And then Broward has 2 ones that will be for the specific county.
Right.
We got 6.
So
and I'm telling you, it was really, really, and that's another one. They kept trying to move the goalposts when we were trying to put Amendment 2 on the ballot. Can you imagine? We're just trying to pay people a living wage so they can live, and they try to fight it. And now the opposition is team up together with all these McDonald's and all these big restaurants to defeat Amendment 2. They have spent millions of dollars defeating Amendment 2 instead of paying the people. I think it's just right cruel.
You won't ever get it. You won't get it.
I don't.
You won't.
So,
David, are you chiming in?
No, I'm not too educated on the amendments. I think you've got great people talking with Katia and Linda on this.
So
Absolutely.
my question was more not what are the organizations saying, you know, like, yes, we vote on two, no on the rest, but is that information trickling down to everyone else? Because the regular voter, they go in there, they may vote yes, and I'm just concerned a lot of these amendments we think are going to be harmful are actually going to pass because there hasn't been as much public education on them because of the pandemic. So that's just something.
As the election get closer, you'll start seeing a lot of talk about it. That's the one thing, but that's why we're trying to jump up front and start to talk about it. And so hopefully it just disseminated through the network of, what these amendments for. But as election season, as closer we get, people are going to start asking questions, but what we're trying to do is catch the narrative, right? Make the narrative in the beginning exactly what it is. Because when the opposition come, and they're coming, they're going to change it. Oh, we're trying to crush businesses. They're trying to, close small businesses, in which can be nothing further than the truth. Because California have $15 minimum wage. California, Seattle, it never happened. They just do not want to pay people what they so deserve. They just believe in just exploiting. McDonald came out with a quote. Listen to this. McDonald said, "We're going to stop lobbying against raising minimum wage." So we must thank them for that. They're going to stop lobbying against us. So they tell you, they never even publicly said they were lobbying against us. But now, I guess they want us to give them kudos for that. And most of the workers are their workers who really, because McDonald's is the second largest company, employer in the world, not the country, in the world. And their number one employers are middle-aged Black women of color. Why? They're the most dependable, the hardest workers, and the one they can exploit. And they're in all our neighborhoods. There's a McDonald's in every neighborhood. A gentleman did a documentary on every Martin Luther King Boulevard around the country. There's a McDonald's. And that's not just a coincidence. I digress.
And if I could just jump in real quick, this conversation just shows how much our communities are holding, right? We're talking about the amendments. Now we're going to talk about the census. We're talking about the primary. Like, it's easy for our communities to be overwhelmed. And the amendment alone, I'm just sitting back listening and I'm just like, dang, like, how do we, one, explain this to everybody, then talk about how important November 3rd is and everybody else who's on the ballot, because our ballots this November can be like 2 or 3 pages, adding the translation, adding the amendment, adding different bonds, which city has what. It's just like so much. So my question to you all, I know this is not a question that is on the live, is if folks, what are you recommending? Are you asking people to get a sample ballot so they can review it before they go in? Are you asking people to vote by mail so they'll have it to do their research in the midst of the pandemic? Are you asking them to go to a particular site so they can do their research because everything is there? Like, what is the best way to get our communities this information?
Start with David.
I think a couple of things that we're telling people to do. One, update your signature. Well, one, we're telling everybody to vote by mail. And first thing is make sure you update your signature.
Whoa. That's a whole nother can of worms. We coming to the vote by mail situation. Go to step 2, David. Go to step 2.
And make sure you vote by mail. And then I think the best place to do, I think we had this conversation before, is local organizations that you trust, your Avance Ensemble, your New Florida Majority, Color of Change, these different organizations, Women's March, the different, whatever organization it is that you work with or you feel resonates with the issues that you care about and you trust them, go to that organization and they're gonna have resources or they're gonna have information on these ballot amendments, on these elected officials, on what they're doing, and when it comes to the things that you care about, and then you can make your decision that way. But we definitely recommend people register to vote by mail and vote early and vote as early as possible and track that ballot so that you can actually be counted, because there's so many barriers that are erected to take away our vote. And like Nancy said, our community holds a lot. We are responsible for a lot. If we do not vote, a lot of this important work that we're talking about, it falls by the wayside. And so that is what I'm telling people to do. Trust your local organizations. Whatever it is, even if it's your church organization, your pastor, whoever it is, talk to somebody. Make sure that you're not making these decisions in a vacuum, because they affect so many more people than just you.
Thank you for that, David. I would add really quickly, I want to have this vote by mail conversation with you all, because I know specifically in Miami-Dade County, there were maybe upwards of 3,000 that arrived post-elections. So we either we're going to get them out on time, or we need to say we voting. We're going to put our mask on, we're going to wash our hands, and we're going to get there. If y'all going to send them past the deadline, then they're not going to count, and that's very unfortunate for our community.
And look, Sandra, before you go, and you can drop it off at the supervisor election in person. That's how I know. That's one of the questions. That's how I vote. I vote by mail because I'm always working on campaign, but I always get my ballot and I go drop it off. I never mail it. I drop it off in person at the supervisor's office. So we know if the USPS issues, folks are hesitant about that, but there are still drop-off locations where you can do it in South Florida, throughout South Florida. Sorry.
Yeah, I think more than UPS, I think people are not gauging that we got to get the ballots time to get there. And I think people were still receiving ballots and just didn't give themselves enough time. And to Jelani's point earlier is that at some point, I love jingles. I'm a Haitian girl. We always have jingles on Haitian radios. I'm like, it got to be so repetitive. And for sure, like 1-800-411-PAIN, we know that. It's not because I've ever called them. It's because it's been so repetitive that we all know, call 1-800-411-PAIN. That's how specific and how repetitive we got to be about this, so that it just sticks with people without them even thinking about it. And the second point about really quickly
one
about
other thing. You said
about
one other thing, Sandra. Well, just one thing about mail, vote by mail. Everybody, please, we had a huge issue. The number was incredible, that people who did not even turn their ballot in. That's another thing we have to touch. We have to chase the ballot. That's another thing. I guess we'll talk about it another day. Ballots were never turned in. Go on.
Thank you for that, Linda. No, you're fine. And I know, David, when folks are working campaigns, they're chasing ballots. And so we got to figure out who didn't turn in those ballots and how do we call them and be like, look, we know you had a ballot, you know, what happened here. But the second thing I would want to say about organizations is that y'all wouldn't believe how many calls we got in terms of Avancing Some on elections day. People who said, look, I've been distracted. How can I find out what's on my ballots? How we vote in? And we can't tell you who to vote for, but if you call in my personal phone, we got Vote 411. I can send you a whole slate. People trust us. That's why they're asking us that. And so again, I started texting my 20 people to Katya's point, where are you? Did you vote? Do you need help? I could send you a slate. Let's get it done. Because people sometimes don't have the time to do the research. So we got to get in front of it. And to me, Jelani, that's the strategy. Let's go to Vote 411, get the slate so people can know what's on their ballot and be like, look, do you need help? I can help you. Call me if you need me. On election day, I can make sure you get it done. I sent a friend a slate. 10 people in her family voted because I sent her a slate, right? So making sure that we know that is the work as well. Go ahead, Katya, I know you wanted to come in.
Oh, I think I just echo what everyone is saying. I think it's, you know, we're not stupid. You know, like, let's keep it 100. We know that most people are not going to pay attention, right? If you know that you're paying attention and you know that you're the person in your circle that pays attention, you're the person in your family that pays attention, pay attention. Reach out to one of these organizations. I'm working right now with an organization called Florida for All, which is a collective of a group of, I think even Avancing Some is a part of creating messaging to get people to vote. Again, if you know that you are that person, I know I am for everybody I know, you know, and the people are going to reach out to you, pick up a slate from one of these, text 411 vote, pick up a slate, pick up information and have it, right? So when it's time to vote, you just shoot it out to everybody. Again, I believe in repetition. Have that little list for your area and shoot it to 20 people. Hold those 20 people accountable. This November, on everything. If you don't show me your sticker that you voted, if you don't show me proof that's a screenshot that the Department of Elections got we don't need to talk, because you don't care about my life. You don't care about the future of your kid's life. You don't care about your community's life. Like, it's time that we get that serious. And Jelani, the question is a great question, because it is us. These are campaigns that are being brought with millions of dollars by people who do not have an interest in making sure that we know. So if you don't hear about it, that is not by mistake, that is deliberate. The people who it harms the most do not have money to put forth campaigns like that. And when we don't, that's why it's called grassroots. It's not grass tops, this is grassroots. It is our job to get the word out. It is your job, Jelani, to reach out to everybody you know and ask them to reach out to everybody they know. Sometimes we live in a bubble and this is the most important thing to us, and we care and we're passionate. And we assume, right, that everybody we know is going to vote. And people got bills. People are now homeschooling. You know, we have, especially in our community, we have Haitian parents that are having to homeschool their kids, and they can't read the language. They don't understand the technology. And let's not talk about Miami-Dade County's technology that doesn't work. But that's another conversation. So we are bombarded and we are overwhelmed, and they count on this. So those of us that do know that we're engaged, it's on us to do our part. Have a slate ready. Have your 20 people that you're going to reach out to. Once this is done, I will send you guys something where, if you believe that you are the influencer in your circle, you are that person, we have like a free training where we can tell you how to talk. We can tell you what to say on social media to combat some of these very, very good misinformation campaigns, right? So again, you're that person. It's our job. You know who you are. It's our responsibility. If you're paying attention, continue paying attention and take ownership. Take ownership of your circle, take ownership of your family, and make sure that you check in on your 20 and get them to vote and let them know what you believe is important. If they don't know, at least you'll be able to tell them. It's important that regardless of how we vote, that we vote.
Thank you, Katya. And I would even echo Jelani. I specifically brought in Linda because there was a conversation that I was a part of on I want to say Democratic Haitian American Caucus, where someone thought she worked on Amendment 3, and she said, no, I work on Amendment 2. And I said to myself, what is Amendment 3? And that's how and this is not like 2 months ago, Jelani, this is like a few weeks ago. And so if you don't know, if I didn't know enough, and it's September, we're getting on these calls, so that, because this is important to us. And to Katya's point, we got to then spread it like wildfire, right? Like you have a whole club. I got a whole organization. We're trying to hold down the Haitian community. David's on the ground. It's us. We got to make sure it gets to the people, because we ain't got the money to fight it. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so Sandra, I just wanted to say a few quick things. So one, I mean, we're all here super voters. We don't miss an election. We're involved. And I was on a call earlier today, and the woman said, our people, and by our people are the audiences that we, talk to, they're looking to us. And so it puts a lot of pressure, because I don't want to always be the one carrying the burden of educating everyone about everything. But that really hit me, because, a lot of us are doing phone bank campaigns and texting campaigns, and to encounter people who say they're not voting, I've been voting since I was 18 years old. It's hard for me to imagine why people don't want to vote or see the importance of it or aren't getting informed, but you're right. It really is on us to make sure that we are speaking loudly from the hilltop. I know something I'm trying to work on for African American engagement is I try to focus on policies. What are the candidates planning to do for the Black community? That has nothing to do with criminal justice reform. Yes, that's important to our community, but we also care about jobs and employment and school and education. And, we want a better future for our families. And so I think that we have to be very policy specific. Sandra, I did send you and Nancy sort of just a flyer that I'm hoping we can convert to sort of something that is that anyone can look at in Creole. Like it's in English, but we're thinking of doing it in Spanish. And then when I heard that, I said, oh, well, why don't we try our best to take the abstract things that people think about with voting and not voting and relate it to their day-to-day life. So you not voting or you voting could potentially have an impact on the COVID-19 response and, you know, making sure our people aren't dying. You voting can make sure that we have police reforms, and so more of our people aren't being killed by the police. You know, you voting could have an impact on a lot of the housing moratoriums that have been passed to keep people in their houses. And I think we don't do a good job really with taking the complicated, like why does it matter that Congress didn't pass any extensions for, you know, unemployment checks and people losing their houses? That is complicated. Let's relate it to individual people on how their life is going to be impacted. And so that's more of what I'm trying to do when I talk to Black voters, you know, relate it to their day-to-day life, and so that they can be interested. You know, I didn't think of that. Maybe I need to vote so that my mom's social security checks aren't cut, you know, and stuff like that. So those are just things that we're trying to do on our end, and that I would encourage a lot of you that you're already doing to talk more about the policies of people in power and how it impacts everyday people day to day.
Absolutely. And to you, Jelani, there were questions about why folks don't vote. You know, I now work for an advocacy organization, and you know, I hear there's a lot of suppression. There are people who show up to the precinct and are turned away, and their precincts change, and they've been voting and things never change for them, and they've been lied to. So many reasons why people don't vote. And I often say to those folks, would you dare dream again? Would you dare believe again? If not for you, for your children, for the next generation. Because we're, you know, everybody not Christian, but we love a good word, right? Our people. And I'm like, you know, won't you hope with us again? And I think in the Obama administration, for folks who are fan, not fans, you know, even if you're not, we believe that he gave us so much hope.
Yes.
Like his rhetoric, like that turns Black folks on. Like we gravitate to that hope message.
That's right.
Right.
That's how we survive slavery. We have to believe that tomorrow is going to be a better day. We have to. That's our survival mechanism.
And so I say, you know, let's dare to dream again. Let's dare to believe that if we do our part, there might be a different tomorrow. And I think, to me, when I say that to folks, it resonates with them. And even if they don't say it, if I can't get it for them, I'd like, you know, think about your child. I've had people say, no, I don't want to. I used to do financial education at the organization that I was. Oh no, I'm broke. I don't want to do financial coaching. Don't you want your kids to know stuff that you didn't know? And I would say that, and you know, you'll see a light bulb flash. But there are a few questions in the live I want to go to. First, you know, some folks talked about updating your signature. David walked people through how to update the signature. We don't want to assume people don't know. There's also about provisional ballots. What is a provisional ballot? I want maybe Jelani, if you can, to take that. What's a provisional ballot? So we're gonna start with David, then we're gonna come to Jelani. Our provisional, and I'm asking questions that I know people asking. First, people didn't know vote by mail ballots were absentee ballots. Are absentee ballots also provisional ballots? Please help the people navigate all these terms. I know they're not, but let's tell them why. Let's start with you, David.
So there are two ways to update your signature. You can update your signature with a voter registration form. It's just the same voter registration form. And then you fill it out normally, the 1 through 7, the 9, and the last line, and that updated signature. That signature that you write on that new form will be your updated signature. And there's another way that you can do it if you actually go into the supervisor of elections office in person. I know VPC does it in Broward, the Lauderhill location, where you could sign it on the pad and your signature gets updated right there. Right. there. Yeah, so those are the ways that you can update your signature. I know sometimes you can update it at the actual polling location, but those are the two tried and true ways that you can update your signature in advance.
All right. Oh, okay. What this son?
I'm gonna try to mute Linda.
I'm gonna go.
Where are we? Hold on a second.
Go do it live.
Here we go. Okay. And then Jelani, let's talk about provisional ballots.
Sure. So great question. So a provisional ballot is basically someone comes to the poll to vote. You know, the workers are trying to find them in the system. They don't find them. They contact SOE. SOE can't find them. And so the voter could say, I voted here in the primary. I don't know why you can't find me. I should be able to vote. And so they can get a provisional ballot, basically, which is, you know, it's a ballot, but it's like we can't verify you can actually vote. So we'll have you fill this form out until we can figure out, you know, like where you are in the system. Also, let's say someone comes to the poll, they don't have any photo ID, no signature. They can also vote provisionally. And so it's sort of counted separately from a regular ballot, but it's a way for someone to still participate while their status as being an official voter can be verified. And then I think the other question you had was on, is absentee ballot or vote by mail, you know, like, is that a provisional ballot? So a lot of it is just nomenclature and how it's said. So absentee voting is the same thing as vote by mail. So to vote provisionally, you're physically on site at the polling location, and they can't verify that you're indeed a voter at for that precinct where you're supposed to vote.
Thank you so much. I want to talk about like some of the, David?
Yeah, just a couple other things on provisional ballot. I know that's a very important thing. Folks, you have, and to what Jelani was saying, you have up to 2 days after you cast that provisional ballot to do what is called a cure, to actually get that ballot counted. Because what happens is provisional ballots are not counted unless we're in a recount. So if you cast a provisional ballot, you vote, but that ballot isn't going to get actually counted unless we're within that 0.5 voting. I forgot what is it, 0.5 or 0.3% margin of the election. So if to get your vote actually cured and vote and counted, you need to then, once you cast a provisional ballot, you need to then go into the SOE to cure it and give them the correct information that you didn't have. And that's either a photo ID or the correct signature because those are the only two ways that, or unless you get challenged at the polls. If you get challenged, if you don't have an ID or if your signature doesn't match, then you cast a provisional ballot. And so you have time after the election to then rectify that. I just want to add that in.
I think it's important for us to not get turned away and not, like, it's important for us to think that provisional ballots are important, right? Because you know what we like to do in Florida, we like to have recounts. And remember, Commissioner, actually Nikki Fried, right? There was a lot that was happening with the Commissioner of Agriculture, as well as the Senator, between Bill Nelson and Rick Scott, the U.S. Senate, as well as Governor, right? And so we saw that, you know, a few recounts had to happen. There was a whole fallout. And not only that, prior to 2018, we remember the Al Gore, George Bush. So Florida has a history of, you know, having to do recounts. So we want to make sure that if you don't have your ID or something happens, that you request a provisional ballot, because if we go into recount, and there's a lot of talk about us getting ready for recounts, especially in Florida with the presidential election, that, you know, you're in there.
And that's why, Sandra, I think it's important that we have the right people at the polls, whether they're watching, observing, or being a poll worker, because I was the assistant clerk where I on election day, there were probably 30 people having some type of vote by mail issues, whether they left it at home. I did not turn away anyone who did not bring their ballot with them because they legally can still vote. It's just that I heard instances at other polling sites where the people running that place, you didn't bring your ballot, sorry, you can't vote, and they turned them away. And so it's those type of things that I can't stress the importance, because the voters, they don't know. We're here to educate them. But the more good people we have, I was one person, there's like 400, 500 precincts in Broward, but the more good people we have affiliated with these places, the less likely we're going to have for people who look like us, whether they don't speak English, whether they forgot something at home. We can talk them through it and make sure that they can vote. So that's just another point.
I want to double back on what Jelani just said. We're talking about Avonsaint. Our target population is predominantly Haitian. It's important also, not just that we're there, but also that we're there so that we are able to help people who do not speak the language, right? We need poll workers. You can get paid to be a poll worker. If you don't see it as a civic duty, see it as a way to make a couple extra dollars. Be in the space when mommy and them come in there and they have questions. We have the patience to deal with our own community. We have the patience. We understand that mommy doesn't know how to necessarily read and she may not know where to put her signature. I saw in the chat where someone asked what are some of the lessons that we learned from the primary with the Haitian community. And one of the biggest lessons I will say on our end is understanding that people need to know that they have to sign it. The number of ballots that were invalid because of missing signatures, we have to make sure that we as individuals have education campaigns where we tell folks, please sign it, double check your grandma's BBM, double check your aunties, make sure that your mom's has signed it, and don't take for granted that they know they have to sign it. That's one of the biggest lessons that we learned, is that folks have to sign it. And I recommend that everybody become a poll worker. Once this is done, I'll send you a number of links, Nancy, where people can sign up to be poll workers, where people can sign up to get their 20 for 20, to make sure that they're educating their own people within their own sphere of influence. We all have way more influence than we know, but making sure that we are in the room, right? We don't want, if you're in Pompano, you don't want somebody coming from Davie working that Pompano poll, not having an understanding of that community. If we're in Little Haiti or in North Miami, I don't need someone from Hialeah because they didn't have enough people from Little Haiti or from North Miami who wanted to be poll workers. So recruiting people to make a couple extra dollars to be poll workers. And if you don't want to work, be a poll watcher. Let's just make sure that we are in that room, that we are in that space, and that we can help our community.
So we are about to, go ahead, Nancy.
Just want to add one quick, what Katia just mentioned. So traditionally, happy Grandparents' Day to everybody who's watching. Traditionally, I take my grandma to vote every election. Like, that is our thing. And I don't do it because I don't trust that she won't be able to vote. I do it because the same, what Katia just said, she's older, her signature changes so frequently, and she wants to make sure that her ballot is counted. And also she has a hard time reading it, not because she can't read, her eyesight is really bad. So if we just take an extra TLC with our elderly folks, check in on them, some of them who are in the nursing homes who don't have that assistance or don't have anyone to take them or to go over the ballot, I encourage our community to do that as well, because we have a large population who people don't have family here or who can't read it for them. So if anybody can do that this election cycle, I've heard that folks called me during this last primary, the mummies, and they needed that extra help. So I encourage folks to do that as well.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for that. I think that's the role, right? Some of us have paid time off. If you can take the day off to be poll workers, you're gonna get paid anyway. You get paid twice. Figure it out so we can make sure our communities are covered. We're actually gonna go into a wrap, and I'm gonna do a brief summary. There's a lot that happened. We're excited that our community came out and voted. There were some huge wins, and there were some opportunities for us to continue the good work, right? To make sure that we continue to push to our needs are met. We also know that in Broward County, there was a lot of changes, and there were also a lot of opportunities in Dade County as well. We know there are organizations on the ground doing amazing work. We also know that this, in November, the ballot that's coming, there's 6 amendments. Specifically 2 and 3, we just had a conversation about it. There are 4 other that we didn't talk about today that we're asking the people who are watching this, who will watch this, that if you're the folks in your community's lives, that your family's life, they always call you, know your stuff so you can share that information. Don't get frustrated when they call you because they know you know. So making sure you know your stuff so you can share with your entire family and with the communities that you're a part of. Sign the mail-in ballot, the absentee ballot, to make sure that it's counted. You can also track it. Please feel free to call any of us. We will make sure that, you know, we can walk you throughout the entire process. We also know that some ballots didn't count because people did not send it out in time. If you're going to vote by mail, let's get it done. As soon as the ballots come, especially if you request a little bit later, make sure you turn it right around, or in David's case, so make sure you drop it off at the supervisor of elections. I dropped mine off at an early voting precinct and I was done, right? So you can drop it off at the supervisor of election or at an early voting precinct and be done. There's state elected officials on the ballot. There's the president that's on the ballot. With the president comes all the cabinets, comes the VP, comes so many things. Don't forget, there are still so many candidates, especially in Miami-Dade County, a lot of runoffs. Miami-Dade County still has a huge mayoral race happening, right? And so I want to make sure that people stay vigilant. But I'm going to turn to my panelists and to my co-lead here to say, like, in terms of your last words or your last advice, and I'm sure we'll invite you all again, because we're going to do this until election day. We're going to get our community as much information that we can get them. What are you all thinking? What do you want to, in my Creole, préciser on, like, be precise that folks leave with this from you, and how can folks find you? We're gonna start with you, David.
Sure, and thank you again, Avancian Assam, for having me here. Thank you, Sandra, for the invitation, and Nancy, and our panelists, Katya, Jelani, and Linda. I really felt enriched by this conversation and being part of it with these great folks. I think what I want to leave with really is just one more thing on the voting piece is, when you're voting, just follow the instructions, bubble it in and nothing else. Don't circle, don't X. That's another thing that we run into. Don't editorialize and say Trump bad on it, because then your ballot doesn't get counted. And we saw a lot of that in 2018 with Andrew. We saw that in 2016 as well, where people put all types of different marks on the ballot. Just bubble it in, nothing else. Save the comments for your WhatsApp group or whatever else. But when we talk about, I think one thing we talked about what's on the ballot in November. I think what's on the ballot is Black lives are on the ballot, plain and simple. This is an election to play around with. We know who the president is, we know what his policies are, and we know who he is fighting for. And so I recommend everybody vote with that understanding and make sure everyone else in your life does as well. I leave you with that.
Thank you, David. I'm going to come to you, Jelani.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra, and thanks for putting this discussion together. I think we need to have more of these. It's all about voter education. So one of my catchphrases is vote early, vote often. You know, I'm a big fan of people who don't wait till the last minute. I understand people sometimes have to wait till election day, but things happen. You know, be aware of who's in your circles and what their level of engagement is. You know, my mom, she voted in her first presidential election in 2016. My younger sister, this will be her first presidential election. So really excited about that. My dad is a so-so voter, and I know that. And last time in 16, I sort of just said, well, you know, I'll just vote for whoever and hopefully it'll work out and he'll vote. This time, you know, I physically went on the SOE website. I signed him up for vote by mail. It's going to his house. To make sure he fills it out, I'm going to collect it. tell him to bubble it in front of me, bring it to the Tamarack Library to turn it in. That's something that I learned from last cycle. We all have people in our lives where people, they will vote if we tell them to, and if we don't tell them to, they're not voting. As David said, this election is too important, so don't let that happen. If there are people that you know aren't going to vote, or maybe not, make sure that they vote. You know, sign them up, drive them to the poll. And so that's really my thing is, don't take anything for granted. Don't be complacent. You know, we've got to always be fighting for every voter. Don't assume that people know why they should vote one way or the other. We've got to educate everyone on the policies and how it's going to impact their lives. So thank you, Sandra, and looking forward to other of these type of forums.
Thank you so much, Alani. Kasia.
Sure. First and foremost, I always want to thank you guys and the awesome work that Avansas is doing. Nancy, Sandra, this is not work that you guys get paid for. This is this is a passion. So I commend you guys. Just a few key points. I just want everybody to take responsibility for their circle. Take responsibility for your crew. Take responsibility for your family. Understand that they may not be paying attention the way that you sometimes may pay attention, or they may not have the capacity. Even if you're not paying attention and you hear this and you're like, you know what, let me pay attention. Let me see what I can find out. Maybe I should find out who people should vote for. That's a sign. I'm a believer. This is Jesus telling you that it is your job to make sure that you, your crew, your circle, your family, they vote. Take responsibility for 20 people. Be accountable that 20 people go vote. And I think that makes a huge difference, especially in a state like Florida. It's a swing state for a reason. It can swing, the pendulum can swing in any direction. Every single vote counts. The other thing that I want to say is I'm so excited to have David and Jelani on this call. We too many times do not have enough young African-American voices in these spaces. And it's important that you guys stay engaged. It's important that you bring in the fold your friends who may not be as interested, who may not be as maybe apathetic, who do not feel like it matters to them. We are losing our young Black men in terms of them wanting to vote, in terms of them understanding how this impacts their life and just not caring. So David and Jelani, kudos to you guys for being here. Kudos for you guys. I want to encourage you to keep bringing more young Black men into this circle, into this conversation. It's imperative that we get them out to vote. You know, folks who don't want our best interest are spreading very smart misinformation to them, and social media is rampant with it. So I can't stress this enough. Young Black people, please, young Black men in particular, please go vote. You know, please make sure that you vote. Don't say that your vote doesn't matter, because it absolutely does, especially in Florida. You're talking about 1% difference. If you don't think your vote matters in a 1% difference, you don't know what 1% means. You know, the number of Black men who just did not vote would have made a huge difference in the outcome of both the presidential election and the governor's race. And last but not least, I want to leave with Sandra's words, which I found extremely profound, and I'm going to copy it moving forward. So when you hear it, don't copyright it. I won't be paying you for it. Dare to dream. Dare to dream again, everybody. Dare to dream, if not for you, like Sandra said, for your kids, for your grandkids, for your future. These things matter. Those of us that are in the rooms with people who are making these decisions, they only care about two things: who voted and who donated. And that's all I want to leave you guys with. Thank you for your time. Please vote. I'm going to send some information out to you to share. Everybody, let's get 20 people engaged. Your 20, your crew. Let's get it cracking, man. Let's have a voice.
That's true. There is a song that say, your crew, my, anyway, I won't go there. That's college. But
we
your
know
crew.
what it is. Right.
Linda, we're going to give you, we're going to wrap up with you, Ashley. Any final words? How can people reach you?
Please, we just launched Amendment 2 website. If you can go on Amendment 2, I applaud you. Please support Amendment 2. But one thing I do want to say is to David, I did not know you are my state senator campaign. You guys did an incredible job. I'm telling you, as a voter, I got a text that morning. I got a text an hour before giving me the address where to vote. And when I did, I voted early. Me and my son voted early. Who met me at the voting place? Mr. Jones himself. Okay. So I thank you. I found out who's the architect of that. That was a very well-run campaign. I love my state senator and I love what he's done for our community, and I will continue supporting him. And the reason why is because when we called him about a McDonald's worker that had got fired, he stood up with the people. So he's definitely a person for the people. And that's what we need to continue having. The people that are going to stand up for us and what we believe in. This employee was fired, and Sharon Jones was the only one that we called and signed on that letter, on our press release. Amendment 2 is vitally important. I cannot even begin to tell you. I told you guys what the last thing one of my members said. It's not going to change her life. It's going to save her life. People are dying out here. We got 2-3 generations living in one home. That cannot stand. So I leave you with this, right? I'll sign off. I have a good friend of mine who is he owns a cemetery. And I was just talking to him and I said, you know, how's it going? He said, you know, Linda, we typically have like 2 or 3 funerals a week. He told me this week they had 54. And there are Jacqueline, Jeans, Pierre's. We are dying. COVID is no joke, and they know we're dying. And that is a purposely reason why there is not a national response to this. This is our opportunity to respond to failed leadership. This is our turn. It's on November 3rd. We can never let them forget that. And all our ancestors and everybody who went on beyond. So I bid you all a good night. Thank you for having me. If you ever you have me.
I just will wrap with this. Thank you all so much. And I'll just say, in our lifetime, that's what I'm talking about, dreaming. In our lifetime, this could be a country for us, right? Good night, everyone. Let's get it done. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Jelani and David, we're going to do one specifically for men. I'll be calling y'all soon. Kasha, you know you're going to be in for the ride. Thank you so much, Linda, Nancy. Nancy's November 3rd, too. Don't forget her. All that good stuff. Good night. Good night.
Don't forget the census. Please don't forget to complete the census.
Thank you.
2020census.gov and complete your census. So don't forget. That's right. Super important. We need that money.
My2020.gov. September 30th is the deadline. You're already late. This is the bonus extra credit. Let's get it done on the census. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.